Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the John F. Kennedy Jr. Forum. I'm Jean Shaheen. I'm the director of the Institute of Politics. That's good. You can clap for that. Thank you. For over 30 years, we at the IOP have been sponsoring with the U.S. Conference of Mayors our seminar on transition and leadership for newly elected mayors. And we are very pleased that in the audience this evening, we have 19 mayors from 12 states around the country who are here for this conference. And we are pleased with the Conference of Mayors this evening to bring you this forum, and very excited about our guest, Mayor Villaraigosa from Los Angeles. To introduce, actually I'm going to rephrase that because we weren't sure that Dean Elwood was going to be able to get here this evening, and he was able to make it despite the bad weather. So he's actually going to introduce our speaker. But to introduce Dean Elwood, we are very excited to have the president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, the mayor of Long Beach, California, Beverly O'Neill. Mayor O'Neill.
Thank you very much. This is really an honor to be here. When the Mayors Institute is at Harvard, the president of the Conference of Mayors gets to say just a few words. And so I'm really thrilled that it's happening this year, and I get a chance to be here with all of you. We have had so many of the students from the Kennedy School as interns in the city of Long Beach, and I just am so thrilled to be here to see all of you and see your involvement here. I spent 30 years in education before I became mayor of the city of Long Beach, and it's always thrilling to be at Harvard. And so I just want to tell all of you that you should be very proud of what you're doing. And also for the mayors, the new mayors that are with us this evening, it's a new phase of life to be mayor of a city, and they're here trying to find out, you know, some of the things that some of the seasoned mayors have gone through and have lived through. So we're delighted to have them with us this evening. Being a mayor is probably the most difficult political position in the nation. We're in a position to make things happen. You all heard the saying, all politics are local, or is local. What is it, is or are? Anyway, you guys would know that. Anyway, I'm really pleased that to let the people know that the position of the mayor is a very difficult one. They know in your city, you know where the mayor lives, you know the mayor's name, you know how to find them. You see constituents if you walk outside of your office. So you're constantly surrounded by people that are judging what you're doing and also have opinions on it. And so the new mayors are here to absorb some of this experience, and this is a new thing that we feel is indispensable. Another reason why I'm happy to be here is I am really honored to share the podium with the dean, of course, but also with my good friend, Mayor Villaraigosa. He is 5 months he's been mayor, but he's had such an impact, and I'm not stealing your thunder, Dean, but I do have to say that I'm thrilled that he is going to be part, or is the program this evening, because what he has brought to Los Angeles and the Los Angeles area, Long Beach is about 30 miles south, and so we share a lot of things in common, such as the largest ports in the United States, the transportation system from the largest ports in the United States, and many things that we have in common that we have in Southern California. But I've known him since his days in the California Assembly. He brings enthusiasm, energy, excitement, optimism, and he's all over town. Every day in the LA Times, he's doing something. And half the time you're surprised. You say, what's he doing in a subway? Or wherever it is. So I'm just thrilled to be here with him, and he will be introduced to you. But right now, I'd like to introduce the Dean of the Kennedy School of Government, David Elwood, and he will introduce Mayor Villaraigosa.
There is a simple test of the significance of an event, which is how many pre-speakers are there before. So it's my very, very great honor to be here. First of all, Mayor O'Neill, thank you very much. And you, in fact, quoted another famous O'Neill when you said all politics locus, Tip O'Neill, a famous Massachusetts person. I assume the relation is in name only. It's far away, that's right. But nonetheless, welcome to all of you to the John F. Kennedy Jr. Forum here. It's my special honor to have the mayors here. They are, as part of this Institute of Politics, transition and leadership for the new mayors. This is a set of opportunities for us. It's a very, very great honor to listen and learn from all of you, and hopefully help you learn from other people, other mayors and some folks around here. It's really a marvelous thing for us, and I look forward to participating in it in other ways as well. I should also thank there are a number of co-sponsors for this event, which includes the Kennedy School's Taubman Center for State and Local Government, Harvard's Fuenza Latina, Harvard's Concilio Latino, and the Kennedy School's Latino Caucus, and the Harvard Journal of Hispanic Policy. So lots of sponsors, also important speaker. So finally, it's time to introduce our guest, Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa. And it's my great honor to mispronounce his name here in the forum. Yeah, I know, but hopefully this will be the last. So, a few months ago, history was made in Los Angeles, in the city of Los Angeles. They had elected this remarkable man as mayor. Part of what made the event truly historic, of course, was that he was the first Latino mayor in the city's 130 years. But his election really does mark a transformative event for the city as well as the nation. For it really does reflect, I think, the changing face of the nation, and as well as the opportunities and challenges that cities all over the country will deal with. You will hear tonight what a remarkably energetic and insightful man the mayor is. He is the leader of the second largest city, and it's certainly one of the most diverse. And what he does will in many ways determine where the rest of the country goes, and ultimately the world, as it becomes much more diverse. Yet, much like his background, his entire strategy and formula for change has been really quite unconventional. He's a native LA. He was the oldest of 4 children raised by a single mother, and he's unambiguously dedicated his life and career to public service in the community. He began that career at the age of 15 when he volunteered to be a part of the first great boycott of Cesar Chavez. And he then received encouragement from a night school counselor to attend college. And he earned a bachelor's degree in history from UCLA and a law degree from People's College of Law. He gained prominence as a gifted organizer and for the United Teachers of Los Angeles. In 1994, he was elected to the California State Assembly, and shortly thereafter, he became Speaker in 1998, which he served until 2000. Now, one might have thought with this background that he would be a charismatic leader, but one wouldn't necessarily have thought he would have had the capacity to make the compromises to get the deals done, when in fact he was known both as a charismatic and dynamic leader, but also someone who could work pragmatically and make things happen. He championed education, health care, civil rights, protection of the downtrodden, and he was unafraid to ruffle feathers. And you'll find that even now, he's ruffling the feathers even of many who have supported him, because he fundamentally believes in doing the right thing and making change. Among the initiatives he's promised to do is to start building a subway to the ocean and to take over the city's ailing school system. There are very real challenges he faces in a city where federal law limits such a subway, and the mayor has no control over the school board. But just you wait. And indeed, one of my favorite features about the mayor is, in fact, his willingness to take on big challenges and to say it's appropriate to make mistakes. That's what leadership's all about. My own view is if you've never failed, you haven't reached high enough. And indeed, in honor of his remarkable achievements, he was selected just recently on the U.S. News and World Report as a list of America's 25 best leaders. This, by the way, was something that our own Center for Public Leadership was involved in the selection process, and so it's a particular honor to have him in this context. So the people of Los Angeles, the citizens of the country, and perhaps all of the world are going to be looking to this remarkable man to provide leadership in the days ahead. We're very, very honored to have him with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me here to the JFK Junior Forum this morning. It's an honor beyond words. I remember sitting with my mother, watching John F. Kennedy make his inaugural speech. I remember that clarion call to service, seared in my memory even to this day. So to be here is especially an honor and something that reminds me why I got involved in public service in the first place. I want to begin by thanking my friend and neighbor, Mayor Beverly O'Neill of Long Beach, California. And since we have so many of her newest colleagues here, my newest colleagues, let's congratulate Beverly on her election as the president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. Quite an achievement. Thank you very much. For those of you who aren't familiar with her record, I want to tell you how much the people back home love their mayor. This is a woman who ran twice, couldn't run again, was elected, though, to an unprecedented third term in 2002 as a write-in candidate. Believe me, she's the only mayor of a large American city who can put that on her resume, and I'm very proud of her, and I'm proud to call her a friend. I want to thank Governor Jeanne Shaheen, but I have to confess to all of you, I said to her a few minutes ago, I'm as disappointed as many of you are from New Hampshire, because I thought she should have been the representative of New Hampshire in the United States Senate. And, you know, you win some and you lose some, and I know that as well as anybody. You didn't mention the race I lost 4 years ago, but I know from personal experience that in your case, the Senate's loss is definitely a victory for Harvard. So thank you for being here. I want to thank Dean Elwood for his wonderful introduction, and you're not alone. Many have mispronounced my name. My wife and I put two names together, and it's a name that many people who speak Spanish can't pronounce because they've never seen it before. I thank you, though, for the very generous remarks you made. And I'd like to thank Bill White, who was nervously putting all of this together, and Christian Flynn, and everybody here who's given so much of their time and energy in organizing this conference. And above all, let's hear it for the 19 new mayors who are here with us tonight, who were elected just 3 weeks ago. And let me say a few words directly to the new mayors. Friends and colleagues, I'm going to let you in on something. I was asked here tonight to talk to you all about the challenges and the opportunities facing America's mayors. And since it was Harvard that invited me, I immediately and eagerly relayed my acceptance. But I need to be candid with you. I've been in office just 5 months, and we're all essentially in the same boat. I feel like I should be out there with the rest of you, listening to what you have to say, and I certainly wouldn't presume to offer you a lecture on how you ought to be running your cities. I'm not big on lectures in any case. Someone once said a lecture is a process by which the notes of the professor become the notes of the students without passing through the minds of either. So if anybody out there is taking notes tonight, put down your pencil. I can tell you what I've learned in 5 months. I've learned that you need to surround yourself with the very best people. I learned that you need to lead your transition with intensity and discipline. I've learned that you need to organize your administration around big ideas that you articulated in the campaign. But I also learned that you need to set the tone and the foundation in your first 100 days by doing the things that you can do right away to have the most immediate and meaningful impact on people's everyday lives. And I learned that you can't bring people together unless you're present and visible in every community in your city. Beyond that, I've learned that every single minute of every single day, you need to be grateful. Because, fellow mayors, as our president just mentioned a few minutes ago, this is the best job in politics that anyone can have. And this comes from a man who used to be the Speaker of the California State Assembly, and that was a great job as well. But being a mayor, chief executive of a city that, in my case, I was born and raised in, a city that's given me more than I could have ever hoped for or imagined, where I grew up, I count my blessings every day, as I hope you do as well. There's no question that it's also one of the most challenging jobs. It's an occupation of infinite reward because, as a mayor, you can see and meet our most daunting challenges, big as they are, and you can come to know the people behind them. And I truly believe it's one of the most important jobs. In fact, I don't think it's an overstatement to say that the future of progressive politics in America rests largely with the men and women in this room and in mayors' offices around this country. Let me try to explain what I mean. In the time since I took the oath as mayor of Los Angeles, we've all been witness to the near loss of an American city. And the tragedy of New Orleans is the watermark that we should all observe in any discussion of the challenges and the opportunities that we face as mayors. Behind the graphic images of people stranded on rooftops and trapped in nursing homes and abandoned to the filth and violence of the New Orleans Convention Center, we saw conditions that prevail in almost all of our cities, especially the big cities of America. We were reminded that here in America, we still live in a society where opportunity remains a grim function of race and class for too many of our people, and where the dramatic gulf between the fabulously wealthy and the desperately poor is widening by the economic quarter. We were reminded 50 years after Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on that bus in Montgomery, Alabama, that 1 in 3 African American children are still consigned to a life of poverty. We were reminded that opportunity is a faint echo for millions of our children trapped in urban school systems that aren't meeting their most elementary missions. And we were reminded that in our nation's cities, working families rely on housing and public transportation that we've neglected and shortchanged. And friends, despite these reminders, despite the images of desolation on the Gulf Coast, despite the hasty promises delivered in the emotional eye of the storm, despite the doubts those scenes raised for all of us about whether we're still moving toward a more perfect union, just 3 short months have passed, and we see our collective resolve receding with the floodwaters. We see a federal policy concerned more with providing mobile homes than ensuring upward mobility for more of our people. 3 short months later, we even see the Congress, in the name of preserving tax breaks for the investor class, voting on a $50 billion package of cuts in child care, in food stamps, in medical coverage for the poor and the elderly, in student aid. Cuts that will hit the very people whose eloquent pleas for help gripped the nation and moved us all. But fellow mayors, I didn't come here to criticize the leadership in the Congress and the White House. In the last several national elections, the party in power has been winning the argument. Their ideas have carried the day. In this sense, at least, the failures we see around us are as much a failure of progressive politics as anything else. In fact, with the larger debate in Washington so intractably divided between the people who want to tear government down and the people who just want to preserve the status quo and protect the programs that we've got, you're left wondering which of the two parties is really the conservative party today. This much is clear. Survey the political landscape, and you see the one place where progressive leaders hold power is in our cities. And I'm not describing a red-blue America or a Democrat versus Republican divide. These leaders represent both political parties. In the last decade, we've seen strong, creative, vibrant, progressive Republican mayors from Los Angeles to New York City. And I'll tell you, at the ground level in urban America, on the streets and in the neighborhoods, where all the nice-sounding abstractions collide with gritty reality, you don't hear the philosophical debates that we hear in Washington about the role of government. You don't see very many people looking into the eyes of kids in failing urban schools in places like South Los Angeles talking about the need to cut spending. You don't overhear people calling for limited government who live in neighborhoods terrorized by gun and gang violence. Friends, it's in the cities where you see progressive innovation flourishing today. Innovations that are based on the central idea that government can be and needs to be an instrument of positive change. And based on the belief that we can still measure ourselves as a society against our greatest challenges. It's in cities where you see mayors like Tom Menino here in Boston, Richard Daley, and Michael Bloomberg expanding the range of their vision and even expanding the powers of their office to take on the critical issue of reinventing urban education. It's in cities where you see innovators like LA's own Chief of Police, William Bratton, applying cutting-edge policing strategies to bring down the crime rate in some of our nation's most underserved and unsafe neighborhoods. It's in cities where you see a progressive new vision taking hold. And fellow mayors, if I were to offer you just one piece of advice as you prepare to place your hands on the Bible, I'd tell you to swear on an oath to be bold. I'd tell you to think big, to dream big. I'd tell you that it rests with the mayors of America to remember and apply the lessons of New Orleans. That it stands to us in search for new ways to face the challenges laid bare by the storm. And mayors, I'd tell you that the defining challenges of our time reside in our cities. We face the greatest challenges of public safety, of fighting the stubborn persistence of drug and gang violence, of protecting our homeland and defending many of our nation's most vulnerable terrorist targets, and yes, of fighting for federal policies not based on politics or partisanship, but on the principle that we should put the resources where the people are, where the risk is. We face the greatest challenges of education, and I'll say it here and now. Reforming our public schools is the central public policy issue of our time. We all know that this is the one way that we can give more of our people a meaningful shot at a better life. It's how we will provide our growing immigrant populations with the opportunities that our parents and our grandparents had. It's how we'll give our workforce the skills they'll need to compete in a global economy where the good jobs are increasingly knowledge-based jobs. And I would submit to you that it's one way that we can address our most vexing policy dilemma. Folks, we can't pay for the medical care and the retirements of the baby boom generation if we don't bring more of our young people along. It is in cities where the future of the American dream will be foretold. Fellow mayors, we need to find ways to keep the defining dream of homeownership alive in our cities, especially today where market values are pushing more and more working families to the financial brink. We need to build more housing in our cities for the people who work. We need to build smart. We need to plan green. We need to put the new homes where the transit is. We need to envision the development in terms of urban villages that seamlessly connect commercial space, housing, and green space. And in cities like Los Angeles, where we lay claim to the ignominious distinction of having the largest homeless population and poverty rate in America, we need to face this shame down and own up to our responsibilities. And we face related challenges of transportation. We need to understand that together good public transportation and affordable housing, along with education, and public safety are the essential preconditions to bringing the middle class back to our cities and retaining the economic diversity that we need to truly grow and prosper. At bottom, these challenges aren't challenges of the left or the right. They're America's challenges. And it stands to us as mayors to meet those challenges creatively, flexibly, without ideology or partisan rancor. We need to communicate their urgency. We need to put our shoulders to the wheel. We need to demonstrate that we can do better. And we need to raise our voices in the national larger debate around an urban agenda promoting safe streets, good schools, housing that families can afford, and public transportation that truly connects our people and brings us all closer together. And I'll offer you just one final piece of advice. If there's one thing I know based on 5 short months of experience on the job in Los Angeles, it's that you can't face the big problems unless you're willing to face up to your own friends and allies when they're wrong. In Los Angeles, we're just beginning the debate about school reform and accountability. And believe me, we've heard howls of protest from old friends at the modest suggestion that something is fundamentally wrong with a system where just half our students reach graduation. I raised the hackles of the defenders of the status quo, and many of these people have supported me personally in the past when I had the audacity to suggest that in Los Angeles it's time to look to the reform models and the best practices of cities like Boston, Chicago, Cleveland, and New York. Fellow mayors, I'm a proud progressive, but you would be surprised at the resistance to change that you will encounter in some quarters of the progressive communities in each of your cities. In the end, I'm confident that we can make our case in Los Angeles. These are good people. These are reasonable people. They care about our kids, and I think that they will ultimately be persuaded to try things in a different way. And as I've been saying back home, positive change is like childbirth. It's difficult. It's painful. But there can be no greater reward in life. In the final analysis, I believe that the onus is on those of us who believe in government, who believe that government has an affirmative role to play in investing in our future and sustaining our prosperity, to demonstrate that government can work better than it does today. The onus is on those of us who believe in public service, to show that our institutions can adapt and change in order to serve a changing world. And the onus is on progressives to offer a true vision of progress, a vision of the future that isn't just disguised as a defense of the past, a vision in which we are constantly searching for new ways to apply the timeless principle of widening the circle of economic opportunity to embrace more of our people. Since we're here at Harvard, I want to share one last thought with you. It has always struck me as a little ironic that Ronald Reagan, the great hero of modern conservatism, loved to evoke John Winthrop's famous phrase about a shining city on a hill. Winthrop, as most of you know, was, of course, referring to Boston, which by President Reagan's time had grown to become the ultimate bastion of unrepentant liberalism, not to mention a place where President Reagan didn't get many votes. But like Reagan, I think we can all draw a larger inspiration from the poetry of that phrase. Fellow mayors, I believe that if you scan the distant shorelines, you'll see that our future as a nation is shining in its cities. I believe that our mayors can truly lead this nation if we have the confidence to scale the highest hill, and yes, even the highest mountain. And I believe that with new mayors like you and with the talent of the young graduates of Harvard and the Kennedy School behind you, that in the coming years we can see our possibilities as a people shining in the city lights of Manchester, Lansing, Cincinnati, St. Paul, Salem, Davenport, Long Beach, and Los Angeles and beyond. Thank you for listening, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's terrific. Now we have time for questions. There are 4 microphones. One is here, one is right up here, one is here, and one is here. And let me just remind people about the nature of questions and the rules here. First of all, a good question always begins by telling us who you are, just your name and affiliation. Second of all, a good question is a question. It is short, and it ends with a question mark. So with that, I'll just start right over here.
My name is Byron McLean. I'm a third-year law school student at Harvard Law School, originally from New Orleans and actually moving to Los Angeles in the fall. Similar to a Category 4 or 5 hurricane that hit the Gulf Coast, it's not a question of if, but when earthquake is going to hit Los Angeles. Specifically, what lessons has Los Angeles and local government officials there learned based on the response of local government officials in New Orleans, and what specific strategies do you have in place to deal with a catastrophic earthquake in Los Angeles?
Well, I think, first of all, we learned that no city can deal with the 100-year earthquake, the 100-year flood, the 100-year hurricane, whatever it is, 100-year fire. You can't do it alone. You have to do it with your state and with the federal government. That's one. What we've also learned is that no city can walk away from the tragedy of New Orleans and not have to take inventory. And so that's what we've done in Los Angeles. We put a group of experts together who are currently assessing our response capability for a number of disaster scenarios, including the 100-year earthquake, the 8 or 9 earthquake that you spoke about. We're also looking at, the issue of terrorism, because clearly we're living in a new world, in a world where this is a very daunting challenges for a city like Los Angeles. Not every city, but certainly New York, Washington, and Chicago are considered the 3 most likely targets, and so we're currently making those assessments. I can tell you this, Los Angeles is considered to have some of the best first responders anywhere in the nation. I'd like to think the best. I can tell you that as an example, for instance, there are 26 urban search and rescue teams in the United States of America. 8 of them are in California, and 6 of those 8 are in my town and in our region. Our city police and fire departments work very well with our sheriff, and so we feel very confident of our ability to respond, but we also know that there were lessons to be learned, and we're currently engaging in identifying what those lessons are.
Next, right over here.
Hi there. My name is Mary Abdo. Thank you so much for being here. I'm a native of Los Angeles, so it's fairly exciting for me to have you here. And before I came to the Kennedy School, I was directing a nonprofit literacy organization in the city. And I'm just curious whether you could talk a little bit about the role that you see non-governmental and nonprofit organizations having in the future of Los Angeles and other large cities, particularly in the education sector.
I smiled because yesterday we announced for the first time in LA that I'm hiring a special advisor specifically to address the issue of philanthropy. I actually met with 2 major groups of philanthropy organizations yesterday. It was in the newspaper, so I thought maybe you might have read it. And I've done that because we've got to think out of the box. We're living in a finite world of resources. The federal government's not going to give us the resources in our cities that we need. Most of our states are going through a fiscal crisis, and so what we're looking at is what are the opportunities that come with working with philanthropy, working with the nonprofits to get synergies and to leverage our assets and grow them. And so we're very intent on doing that. In addition to that, I mentioned that to the mayors that you need, when you put your transition together, you need to put the plan together to fulfill all those promises you made. And I know you all made a lot of promises because that's what we do when we run for office. And what we did was we actually went to philanthropy, a philanthropic organization. the Irvine Foundation, got them to hire McKinsey, which is a strategic, an organization that does strategic planning and the like. And we're actually in the process of putting first my senior staff and then the entire city leadership on a track to meet all of our goals in the next 4 years. And we did that with philanthropy. And that's just one small thing. You mentioned literacy. I've met with Los Angeles. I told you, largest poverty rate. It's not New York or Chicago or Detroit. It's Los Angeles. Largest homeless rate. Largest rate of uninsured children in America. And by the way, their parents are working every day. So these aren't people that, why didn't I want the job? I just told you, this is a city that's given me so much, and like you, love public service. But the point I'm making here is that we have a 52% illiteracy rate in LA. And so we are working currently with some of the philanthropic organizations to see what we can do to leverage more funding for literacy in Los Angeles.
Right up here.
Hi, my name is Alex Cole. I'm an MPP 1 student here at the Kennedy School. Thank you so much for
MPP 1.
Master of Public Policy.
All right.
Thanks for being on the lingo.
For the uninformed.
Thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Your predecessor was heavily criticized for taking too much money from special interests and engaging in pay-to-play politics. 2 weeks ago, the Los Angeles City Council unanimously passed a resolution to study a system of full public financing for the city of Los Angeles. I know that the mechanics are still to be worked out, but conceptually, do you support a clean money system, a full public financing system for the city of Los Angeles?
Conceptually, yes. The devil's going to be in the details. I mean, you've done it in Arizona. LA is it's a very big city. The cost of campaigning is, it's very expensive. My race was an $8 million race, and that's not even counting all the people that did independent things. And so, yes, conceptually, I am in support of it. I've been in support of campaign finance from my first days in the legislature. But the devil's going to be in the details. And the rub is going to be, are people going to be willing to pay, for the system? But is the public willing to do that? But yes, conceptually, I do support it. And I've said to the council that we should, really ferret it out and ask all the questions and maybe try it out as well. I'm open to that, on the council basis or on a citywide basis as well.
Right up here.
Hi, Mayor. My name is Katie Gray, and I'm a sophomore at Harvard College, and I'm from Thousand Oaks, California.
How many LA people there? Thousand Oaks?
Woo!
Man.
So it's good
great.
to see someone from sunny California here.
That's right.
We also help with absentee ballots.
Yeah. Good.
My question is, the California initiative to extend public school teachers' parole and evaluation period failed 3 weeks ago, and that's arguably because of pressure from teacher unions. My question is, how will you be sure that public school students get really high-quality teachers and that the best teachers are paid and the bad teachers are not kept on the job without, and be sure to listen to not only teacher unions?
Well, maybe you didn't know who I was talking about when I was speaking a few minutes ago. My wife's a teacher. She's a member of the California Teachers Association. I worked for the teachers for 8 years. I was unquestionably the champion of education the 6 years that I was in the legislature, the author of almost every major initiative, largest school bond in U.S. history, a $9 billion effort to rebuild and modernize our schools, biggest infusion of money in our schools. And yet, on this issue of mayoral control, we don't agree. And so I've had to have a parting of the ways on this issue. And I think it's important for all of us in public life to be able to, as I said earlier, to disagree with your friends. to disagree with people, because ultimately you have the job and you have to do what you think is right. And on the issue of education, I think the system is broken, especially in our urban schools. Public schools work well, without question, and I'm a big supporter of them, but they work well in some places. They don't work well everywhere. When you see a school system, and I'll bet, the numbers aren't far off in New York and Chicago, though there's more innovation there, or in some of the other cities that are represented here today, these kids are not going to Harvard in the numbers that they could. They're not going to Princeton. They're not going to UCLA or even, the Cal State system. And I think we could do better. So on the issue of the teacher tenure issue, I wasn't supportive of that, I'll be honest with you. I think most teachers are dedicated and do a good job. But on this issue of mayoral control, I do disagree with teachers.
Hi, Mayor. My name is Mipio Kinsande. I'm a first year at the law school. First, wanted to thank you so much for coming. Throughout the history of progressive politics, students have always played a major role in being the driving force of change. And I was wondering if you think there's the same level of civic awareness in generations of today as there have been in previous generations, and if not, what we can do to really reignite a spirit of political activism in today's youth.
Now, you're asking someone that grew up in the 1960s. And I'd say if you compared it to the 1960s, of course not, and everybody knows that. I mean, the 1960s was a generation that was just, stood out in the 20th century, without question, in terms of activism and the like. But I still believe, and why I have so many young people working for me, I love the fact that people come with optimism and idealism and this sense of the possible, and a willingness to innovate, and that I think young people come with. And that's, you don't, sometimes the older you get, the more cynical you get, the more apathetic you get, I've noticed. I mean, even the people I grew up with and I was walking on the picket lines with in the 1960s, kind of angry and cynical now. So, I think young people do have a very important role in society, to be that catalyst for change. I also say to them from time to time, as my mother said to me, she'd say, go get a job, son. Because when you get a job, you realize people want to know what you're for, not just what you're against. They want to see you build something, not just tear it down. And that's important too, because, using that idealism to build is the best way to be productive. But I have a lot of respect for the men. I'll tell you, the young people that work for me, they inspire me every day.
Down here.
Hello, sir. Hi, my name is Michael Kirsch. I work with the LaRouche Political Action Committee here in Boston. First, I'd like to thank you for your opening statements on New Orleans, and secondly, I'd like to congratulate you on the recent defeat of the 5 measures on the referenda for Schwarzenegger in California. It might be easier for you to govern now. My question is concerning the current crisis with GM and Ford and the machine tool sector in the United States. As you and your associates here very well know across the nation as mayors, that the infrastructure of the United States is in a very serious crisis. The dams, the power plants, and the train systems, schools, as you mentioned, et cetera. The machine tool sector of GM and Ford is in a major crisis if we lose this with the imminent bankruptcy, which is coming a lot faster than people thought. And so I'd like to ask you if you could comment on the importance of GM, Ford, and the highly skilled labor force, and what you propose that we do as a nation to salvage it.
I don't know if I'm in a position to propose anything, to be honest, but I will say a couple things. Our economy is changing before our very eyes. I mentioned earlier we're in an information society and an information-based economy, and we've got to grapple with that. The reason why education is today more important than it was even 40 years ago is 40 years ago you could have a high school education and go work at a GM plant. Now a high school education won't get you that kind of a job, because manufacturing jobs, as you well know, are disappearing in our cities and all across the nation. And so now more than ever, we need to focus on schools and on raising the education level of our people if we want to compete in a global economy. With respect to infrastructure, though, you mentioned, I think America has been remiss over the last decades in terms of the failure to really invest in our infrastructure. You know, they call it government, or spending when we're, or pork programs when we're investing in, refurbishing our bridges and our highways. Well, in the 1950s, they called it the National Security Act or something, because they saw it as, connecting the nation together. When you have roads and highways and schools and, parks and, water projects that, that keep the power on, all of those things are very important. We have failed, especially in our cities. The federal government has failed miserably at investing in the infrastructure and the public transit and all of those things that we really need.
Thank you.
Hi, Mayor. Good evening. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Yahweh. I'm an MPP 2, second year. I had a question that relates to the projected retirement of the baby boom generation and how that will impact the public sector employment. As a public policy of a professional school, a lot of us are looking for career opportunities in the public sector. And I was just wondering what you thought are the doorways into local government. When we look around, we see certain urban fellows programs and opportunities to be inspired to get
Los Angeles. All of you.
But my question...
You'll have a job.
Well, thank you. But my question just then is, what kind of opportunities should there be? Should there be formalized entry positions for students from graduate programs? How will you ensure that the greatest kind of profession working in local government will have the most talented people involved too?
I'm not sure I'm equipped to answer all of the ramifications of your question. The initial statement about how we, address this, the baby boom generation, its impact on the next generation. I mean, what's happening in America today is that we're basically asking all of you to pay the freight. We're basically saying, I'm a parent. I have 4 kids. I have a 30-year-old, a 27-year-old, a 16-year-old, and a 12-year-old. And my wife and I, when there's a fiscal crisis at home, we know it's on us, not on the kids, because our job as parents is to make sure the kids have what they need to go on in their chapter in life. And what we've done here is, we're essentially putting it, the cost on all of you in a way that I think is unacceptable and a departure from what we've done in the past. With respect to public employment, I'd say to you that, I was joking, but not joking as well, trust me. Historically, so many of the young people that go to these great schools, tuition costs as much as it does. You're the best and the brightest, and, a lot of the best and the brightest want to get rich, so they go into business, or they go into some profession that will, get the compensation for all the hard work. And, I would submit to you that public service is important. And, from the Roosevelt days, our ability, and the Kennedy days, our ability to get the best and the brightest in public service is very, very important. And so all I can tell you is that in Los Angeles, I'd be very interested in people with those skills and sets and that idealism that we spoke about, wherever you are. All of that, that combination together. I'll try to keep my answers a little shorter. So.
Hi, I'm Michael Gould-Rotowski. I'm a junior here at Harvard College. Thanks so much for coming to speak to us. I found your discussion insightful and visionary. I just had a question. The community of South Central LA, recently said it wants and needs the mayor's leadership in saving the South Central Farm, which over the last 13 years has become the largest urban community garden in the country and a model of community self-help, save it from being destroyed by so-called developers and turned over into a cement warehouse. I was wondering, what is the role you see for progressive like yourself in preserving and expanding working communities' access to green space and also community food and health initiatives like this one?
First of all, I'm the author of the largest initiative for urban parks and open space in the United States of America in 1998, Proposition 12, $2.1 billion initiative for urban parks. I put $100 million, did a budget augmentation of $100 million for the Los Angeles River. The 130-acre green space that was the largest piece of green space left in the inner city, I saved from development, and now it's going to be a passive park in those communities. I'm well aware of the South Los Angeles farmers. That was something that happened prior to my getting elected. We owned the land, we sold it to a developer, and then that developer wants to take the land back from these farmers. It's a beautiful urban space, but it's probably worth, at least $10 million or so. And what I've said to them is, I want to help them, but they're going to have to work with us. It's very difficult to just pull $10 million from the closet or the shoebox and kind of create a place for a garden like that. But notwithstanding that, I do feel for them, and I do believe that garden is a jewel, and I'd like to figure out how we can, keep it somehow, some part of it.
Hello, Mayor. My name is Doug Chavez, Constituency Director for the Develop Patrick campaign, future Governor of Massachusetts.
Good man. I'm going to sit down with him
very good man.
Later on tonight.
Good. My question is quick. In the age of terrorism that we live in, you brought up earlier, and since your city has an influx of immigration, a large community of immigrants, how do we dispel the growing negative notion that immigrants equals bad and immigration equals terrorism? This administration has instilled fear into this country, and now the word immigrant just scares everyone.
America's had a love-hate relationship with immigrants from the very founding of the country. What's absolutely amazing, I know I speak without equivocation when I say America has been built on the backs of immigrants, whether they come from Europe or whether they come from Africa or Latin America or Asia, wherever they come from. It was built on the hopes and dreams of those people. And I'll tell you, you asked me why I would be excited about, why I would take a job like that. It's precisely because it's the most diverse city anywhere in the United States of America, maybe the world, and their energy and their vibrancy and their sense of hope and the possible is what just inspires me every day. And so when I hear and see those Minutemen, I know, one, they're ahistorical. You know who the Minutemen were? Half of them were Scotch-Irish immigrants. Half of them were Scotch-Irish immigrants. You know who fought in the Civil War? Immigrants fought in the Civil War in great numbers in the American Revolution as well. So those people who would vilify and stigmatize and demonize immigrants in the way that they do, I find repulsive. And they appeal to the worst emotions in all of us and the worst fears. Having said that, we live in a nation of laws predicated on the rule of law, and every one of us have a responsibility to enforce the laws of the land. We need to do it in a humane way. We need to do it in a way that reunifies families and in a way that makes common sense. When Europe was concerned about immigration from Ireland and Spain, Europe decided to invest in Ireland and Spain in a strategic way. Ireland and Spain's economy are two of the fastest growing in Europe. Want to deal with immigration? Let's be smart. Enforce your labor laws. Force child safety laws. Workplace safety laws. Hold employers accountable who are hiring the undocumented. And then invest in the center countries in a strategic way. I would submit to you that it'll go a long way, much further than the kind of, things we're hearing about even over the last couple of days and certainly over the last few months. It's my thought about immigration.
Great. We're only going to have time for 2 more questions. Right here.
Hello, Mayor.
Hello.
Also,
Hello, Boston.
Well, actually, I was born and raised in Los Angeles.
I thought you might be a California boy.
Yeah, actually, I just got back today. But one thing I just wanted to bring up was that the way that you think of the role of government is pretty on point, because it's very critical right now, especially given the fact that with the issues in the economy and other issues that you also addressed are of critical importance to be dealt with in an immediate matter. I just want to put emphasis on 2 things, and then ask you to comment on your perspective in terms of the mobilization to get these things done. One, if you could, 2 of the main points that need to be dealt with to get the nation functioning again in the immediate period is the immediate removal of Dick Cheney from office. And as the young gentleman back here mentioned, the retooling and refurbishing of the machine tool sector of the United States. Now, in order to do that, you're going to need a massive mobilization of the population under a real strategy in the way that Franklin Roosevelt had been able to organize the citizens around a real strategic mission for the country. So, I want to know what is your outlook in terms of the strategy of reactivating that base of the population to build the type of movement necessary to get the institutions moving?
I don't want to be flippant, but I don't want to overstate the case. I've been in office 5 months, mayor of the city of Los Angeles. I've been in office before that for, 8 years, 6 in the assembly and 2 in the city council. I have enough challenges in the city of Los Angeles that I'm not going to pretend that I'm ready for or in any way can, spearhead a movement, if you will, on what the national challenges are. But I did speak today to all of you about some of the many challenges that we face, and I think it is important that in my role as mayor of the city of Los Angeles, a city that is the 2nd largest in the United States, that we articulate an urban agenda for America. That's not left or right, that's not Republican or Democrat, but that's an investment in people and an investment in infrastructure and in revitalizing our cities, which have always been, well, not always, that's not true, at least since the turn of the century, well, really since the 1860s. Since the 1860s, it's been the cities that have been the motor force of the national economy. And what you see today is a complete disregard and a disinvestment in our cities. And I'm going to speak to that in the course of the next few years.
Last question, right up here.
Hi, thank you for coming. My name is Garrett Morgan. I'm a sophomore at Harvard College and a native Angelino, born and raised.
Born and raised.
Yeah. Last summer, I held a job, and it required traveling on the 101 for 100 miles every day. And it was a somewhat painful experience, as anyone who has ever been on the 101 or gone through the intersection through the 405, the busiest in the country, can attest to, I'm sure. So I'm just wondering, how do you as mayor propose, I know you've only been in office for 5 months, but initially, are there any proposals that you have for affecting change in the basic infrastructure of the city and this particular area of transportation? I'm aware of your interest in the subway system, but how do you propose to change this, which affects millions of travelers every single day in Los Angeles?
First of all, what I say to people, and I did in the campaign, I look them straight in the eyeball and I say, you ask me to fix the traffic as you get in your single-passenger automobile, go 2 blocks to the market, and wonder why we have gridlock in Los Angeles. I say to them, we have gridlock in Los Angeles because We're the quintessential city of sprawl. All of our housing is in the outskirts. All of our jobs are in the inner core. We have refused, we dismantled our public transportation system in the 1940s, a public transportation system that was the most extensive in the United States of America. We rely too much on the single-passenger automobile. And so what do we need to do? We need to invest in public transit without question. We need to in Los Angeles, go to Washington, D.C. and Sacramento to get our fair share of public transit dollars and articulate, as I said earlier, this idea that investing in public transit isn't subsidizing passengers, it's investing in the movement of people so that the highways can move goods. We need to rethink what the city looks like. And when I talked about growing smart, we should have housing next to transportation nodes and light rail and subways. And that's the kind of housing that we're going to be building in the next few years. We need to incentivize employers to go to alternative work schedules because everybody can't go to work and leave work at the same time and wonder why we have gridlock. We need to do the small things. I stopped construction during the rush hour. It was a big thing that people wanted. And I gave it to them. I gave it to them in the first 100 days. But guess what? Anybody who's ever been to Los Angeles, you got gridlock 24/7 on every... So I stopped construction and nobody even noticed it. I did a big press conference. It was nice. I filled the campaign goal, but I didn't do anything to reduce traffic because it had a minimal impact. We're synchronizing our lights in the city, but it's a $240 million proposition, so obviously we can't do it, overnight, and we're in the process of figuring that out. Ultimately, it's going to mean a culture shift. People are going to have to get out of their single-passenger automobile. They're going to have to go on to public transit. That's why I'm focusing on subway and light rail line. We were very successful in the first few months getting money from Washington, but not as successful as I hope to be in the future.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mayor, we all look forward to the time when Shining City on the Hill unambiguously applies to Los Angeles, as well as many others. Thank you very much for a remarkable presentation.